Hey creeps, it's Cameron again, and welcome back to Library Macabre. On the last episode, I talked about all of the vintage teen horror books that I got in the month of January 2021, and that wasn't all of the books I bought. I did buy some adult horror as well, so I'm going to be showing you all of those today. The majority of these books are vintage horror, but I did get a couple of newer horror books that were sent to me for review. So the first one here is Seasons Creepings, Tales of Holiday Horror by Ronald Kelly. In October 2020, Ronald Kelly released his amazing short story collection called The Halloween Store, which was an anthology of Halloween stories. And this is a short story collection of Christmas horror. So it's very similar. It's from the same publisher, which is Crossroad Press / Macabre Inc., and it's done by the same cover artist. The Halloween Store was a really creepy, cozy read, perfect for Halloween, and this looks like it's going to be the perfect creepy, cozy book for Christmas. And I did want to read this at Christmas time. Unfortunately, I missed the message offering this for review, so this arrived a little bit after Christmas, but that's okay. I'm still going to give this a read. Ronald Kelly also signed it for me, and he drew the skeleton dressed as Santa. He's holding a knife. That is just the most amazing thing I've ever seen, and it's one of my favorite things about being a book reviewer is getting stuff like this. So cool. I also received this beautiful book, totally unsolicited, from Weird House Press, and that is The Red Stone of Juba by Donald Tyson. I do have another one of his books that I won in a giveaway, actually. It's another Weird House book. It's called The Skinless Face. I have that in my review pile, but I'm really excited to get to this too, because this is, of course, horror set in Egypt. I love a good mummy story, so this will be a lot of fun. I'm hoping for a lot of adventure and ancient mummy curses and all of that good stuff. This is a gorgeous hardcover book. You can take a look here. The book is beautifully bound in cloth. The end papers are illustrated, and the rest of the book is also illustrated and signed by Donald Tyson and M. Wayne Miller, who did the illustrations. And this is limited to 100 copies, and I have number 49. And you can get this on the Weird House website right now. It's actually pretty inexpensive. I think it's around $40 for the book or something. I'll post the link down below in the graveyard. I am also reading another book from them called Devil's Night by Curtis M. Lawson, which is fantastic so far. I'm really loving that. So expect a review of that very soon. And I have one more newer book to show you. It's actually a magazine. This is the newest issue of Fangoria, featuring Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2 on the cover, which is one of my favorite 80s sort of slasher films. It's a paranormal slasher, I guess you could say. So I'm really excited that they included Hello, Mary Lou on the cover, and there's a nice article all about it and an interview with the writer. Okay, time to get into the vintage books. So I ordered a few vintage hardcovers from a seller on eBay, and they had some pretty good deals on these. I got a first edition of The Presence by David B. Silva. I have heard a lot of good things about this author. He's actually out of the UK, so this is a UK first edition. There's a picture of him on the back wearing a cowboy hat. Allie Turner's husband, Max, has been missing from home for nearly 9 months now, and Allie is desperately struggling to hold her family and herself together. But things begin to fall apart when her 12-year-old son, Sean, is badly burned in a fire at the abandoned lumber mill. At the hospital, as Allie and her older son, Daryl, keep watch over Sean, things become increasingly difficult to handle. For Sean confides to Daryl that he encountered their father at the mill just before the fire broke out. Worse still, there was something terribly wrong with the man's face, as if part of it had melted away. Daryl has already had a hard time dealing with his father's absence and isn't sure if he can believe Sean, but he promises to search for Max anyway. His quest leads him to Old Miners Creek, where he uncovers something unbelievably terrifying. There's a scattering of dead animals, all with the same facial disfigurement his younger brother previously described. Yes, something strange and otherworldly has come to Kingston Mills, something dramatically affecting all living creatures, which across its path a curious, unstoppable presence of evil. And from the same seller, I got a hardcover first edition Richard Lehman book. I was really excited to find this for, I think it was only $10 on their store, which is pretty good for a first edition hardcover of one of Lehman's books. So we have One Rainy Night. Richard Lehman has been recommended to me a lot, especially lately. I've had a lot of comments telling me I need to check out Richard Lehman's work. I do have a couple of his books. I have a few of his paperbacks up here on this shelf, actually. A viewer recently told me he's like Stephen King, but without a conscience. So obviously I need to check this out. The synopsis of One Rainy Night says, "It begins with the kind of murder that men are accustomed to. And then comes the rain, and the kind of killing that none can understand." Are men accustomed to murder? "The water drops like a shroud on the town of Bixby. Warm, vicious, and unnatural, it coats the inhabitants in an unending torrent and turns them into crazy, hate-filled maniacs. A helpful stranger at a gas station shoves a petrol pump down a customer's throat and squeezes the trigger. Oh my god. An entire cinema queue smashes its way inside the movie house to slice up the dry people within. A loving wife hurls herself at her husband and bounces his skull on the marble floor until it sounds like the back of his head has turned into sloppy wet meat. The rain falls on customers as they enter Bixby's ritziest restaurant and hurl themselves on the diners within like a pack of starving wolves. It falls on Maureen as she delivers pizza. She delivers a haymaking punch with a rock in her fist instead. And as pretty Denise opens the door to her boyfriend who has come to help her babysit, it falls on him too." And that's where it ends. I'm guessing kill her? I don't know. That's the last bit of the synopsis. That sounds insane. It actually really reminds me of The Brain Eaters by Gary Brandner. I did a review of that recently, which I'll post up there. It has a very similar sounding synopsis, but instead of like a chemical outbreak, it's something in the rain. And I love that cover with the bloody axe. Okay, next we have The Neighborhood by S.K. Epperson. I believe I have a couple of Epperson's paperbacks. Again, we've got the bloody axe on the cover. We're seeing a trend here. How true for Abra Aarons, a nurse caring for one of this small neighborhood's more upstanding citizens, who discovers the source of the community's recent troubles, which include an insidious disappearance, the skills of an amateur torturer, and a series of garish homicides. Finally, Abra is faced with the choice of withdrawing the welcome mat and putting a stop to the madness herself, or of becoming the next victim of the people next door. So I'm guessing this is about like a neighborhood of homicidal neighbors. Sounds fun. And next we have a Tor hardcover. This is The Island by T.M. Wright. I have quite a few of T.M. Wright's books. Still trying to collect all of his work though. Next I have a horror anthology called White of the Moon, New Tales of Madness and Dread, edited by Stephen Jones. This is a signed copy. Let me find the page here. Signed by the illustrator of the frontispiece and Stephen Jones himself. And the frontispiece is really, really nice. Look at that. This was sent to me by a friend of mine named Troy Tradup. He is an author and he's a supporter of me on Patreon. He was really kind and sent this to me randomly. I didn't even know this was coming. Really, really cool. I'm so happy to have a Stephen Jones signed hardcover. I also found a hardcover first edition of 4 Past Midnight by Stephen King. I already had a first edition hardcover, but it was in really bad shape. So I'm glad to have such a nice copy. This was only $6 on eBay, and I was already ordering a few things from this store, so got it for super cheap. I thought for $6 more, better get it. Next, we're going to be looking at all of the Zebra and Pinnacle paperbacks that I bought in the month of January. The first one was one that I was so happy to find on eBay. It was very inexpensive, which was surprising to me because these books are usually pretty pricey. And that is Blood Sisters by Deborah Sherwood. Only those who passed the deadly initiation would become members of the Blood Sisters. The next Zebra book was published in 1992, and this doesn't say horror on the spine, it says it is suspense. But the cover definitely looks horror to me, and the synopsis Certainly sounds like a horror story. Carrie Sutton thought she had pieced her life back together after losing her husband. She'd gotten a part-time secretarial job, put away a nest egg for her teenage daughter's education, and used insurance money to move them into a nice suburban home. But things were far from fine. In fact, a growing fear began to overtake her. Her daughter was drifting away from her, acting sullen and secretive, and the house. Odd, unexplainable things seemed to plague it. Lights turning on by themselves, cold drafts in her daughter's room, a shadow moving through hallways. At times, Carrie even felt that someone was waiting in the darkness, watching. That cover is terrifying and the synopsis sounds chilling. So, very much looking forward to reading this. I actually found this at a bookstore in the mystery section. Definitely look through the mystery sections of bookstores because sometimes you'll find these psychological suspense books that can really pass as horror. I'm really glad that I found this because I'd never heard of it before. Here's another one that I actually found in the mystery section. This is another Zebra book. It is called Freeze Frame by Marjorie Donner. And the cover of this compares it to Silence of the Lambs, so it's obviously one of those early 90s thrillers. Next is a Pinnacle book published in 1992, and this is actually labeled as romantic suspense, and that is Till Death Do Us Part by Pat Warren. It was a fairy tale life for blonde, blue-eyed Stephanie Westover, married to a successful businessman, living in a wealthy suburb of Detroit, working with a local theater. Nobody knew the truth. Stephanie's dream world had shattered into a million jagged pieces, and the sharp edges were about to cut her to shreds. For Zane Westover, her perfect husband, has slowly become her deadly enemy, and Stephanie's only hope was to escape. Now, she was on the run, one step ahead of a man with a bloodthirsty mean streak and powerful friends, and somehow Stephanie knew Zane would never stop searching for her, not until he fulfilled his threatening vow. Till death do us part. Sounds a lot like the movie Enough with Jennifer Lopez from the early 2000s, except I don't think there's any martial arts involved. I don't know, maybe there is. Another book I was really happy to find on an eBay store for a very good price is Lifeblood by Lee Dugan. This was published by Pinnacle in 1988. Yeah, 1988. And I read one of Lee Dugan's other books called Schoolhouse, which I actually have right here on my bookshelf. Fantastic book. Definitely recommend picking this up if you can find a copy. I know it's pretty rare. And I'm really excited to read his other books. I actually have one of his other books called Mind Stealer, and then I have another one on the way called Precog, and then I'll have all 4 of his books. So I'm excited to just kind of binge through and check out his other work. This one is obviously, I think, a vampire story. Millboro, New Jersey. Just the kind of place Winslow Emerson, MD, had in mind. A small township of yuppie couples who spent their little time at home, children shuttled between the unburdened school system and every kind of after-school activity. Parents too tired after a hard day's work in the city to notice anything odd in their darling children's behavior. A town ripe for the kind of evil Dr. Emerson specialized in. For Emerson was no ordinary doctor, and no ordinary mortal. He was a creature of ancient legend, of mankind's darkest nightmare, and for the citizens of Millboro, he had arrived where they least expected it, in their own backyards. So there's a vampire posing as a doctor. Awesome. Next is a much, much later Pinnacle title, and this is Eternity by Tamara Thorne. This kind of sounds like an isolation kind of slasher story. Another newer Pinnacle title is The Montauk Monster by Hunter Shea. Hunter Shea is famous for his creature feature kind of books. Never read any of his work, which I know a lot of you are probably gonna cringe at me for saying that. I definitely need to read his books, and I've heard good things about this one. So there's The Montauk Monster. Next we have some old school, like 60s pulpy horror. The first one is a movie cover version, and that is The Forbidden Garden by Ursula Curtis. And this is what the movie Whatever Happened to Aunt Alice is based off of. I've never seen that movie. I have seen Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, but I do need to see the movie of this. I guess I'll read the book first. It's very, very short. Next is The Unknown. This is an anthology edited by D.R. Benson, and it has a foreword by Isaac Asimov. Published by Avon in 1969, we have Weird Shadows from Beyond. This is edited by John Carnell. Just take a look at that cover. Very weird. Got this for 99 cents, along with the rest of these on an eBay store. Next we have 15 Tales That Touch the Raw Nerves of Fear, Terror. Edited by Larry T. Shaw. That cover's totally amazing. I love that it's a photograph. I want to do something like this for a cover of one of my books someday. And this one is actually published by Carousel Mysteries, so it's technically a mystery book, though it is about a vampire. And this was published in 1982, so it's not that old, but it does have that old school pulp look to it. This is book number 3 in the Protector series, Ready or Not, by Erwin Zachariah. And this is basically about a vampire, and there's a detective who's tracking him down. Next we have Saurian or Saurian. I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly. This is by William Scholl. I have most of William Scholl's books, but this was one of the ones that I was missing. It is pretty creased up. It's not in the best shape, but it was only $1 at a bookstore. All of Scholl's books are actually back in print now, thanks to Encyclopocalypse Publications, so definitely look them up. They have all of his books printed with the original covers, and then they also have like the novelization of Reanimator, the novelization of Fright Night, which I just reviewed. I'll post the link up there. So if you have been wanting to read Scholl's work, but you can't find any of his original books, definitely look up Encyclopocalypse because they'll have you all set up. Also from Leisure, we have Affinity by J.N. Williamson. This is one of the much later Leisure books. This was published in 2001. I have so many of Williamson's books, it's crazy, and I haven't even read any of them yet. I've heard mixed things about his books. Some people really appreciate him, other people say his books aren't that great. I will decide for myself when I read some. Published in 2007 by Leisure, we have The Everlasting by Tim Levin. Published in 2000 by Leisure is You Come When I Call You by Douglas Clegg. Next, I have a few books published by Pocket Books. This one was published in 1988. It's called Spirit Warriors by Devin O'Branahan. Look at that amazing cover. That is awesome. Another Pocket book is Shock Rock 2, edited by Jeff Gelb. I already have the first one, so I'm really excited to have a nice copy to complete my duo. And then, of course, we have a V.C. Andrews book. This one is called Heart Song. I still pick up V.C. Andrews whenever I can find her books for cheap. Of course, this one isn't actually written by V.C. Andrews. This is one of the books that Andrew Niederman wrote after her death. Published by Dell in 1983 is The Nursery by David Lippincott. Next is The Unforgiven by Patricia J. McDonald, and this actually has a quote from Stephen King on the cover. It says, "Real and immediate, almost hypnotic, gruesomely effective, a scary, engrossing book." This has a really cool keyhole cover. I love that step back art. Very, very spooky. Next we have another Dell title. This is Des Modus by Melanie Tim. First I thought this was a Del Abyss book, but this was actually published after the Del Abyss run. Body Mortgage by Richard Engling. This is published by Onyx in the 80s. Another Onyx book is The Nightmare People by Lawrence Watt Evans. A novel of unspeakable horror. One by one, his neighbors disappeared, devoured by the Nightmare People. Next, published by Jove, we have Night World by F. Paul Wilson, author of The Keep. Night Prayers by Frank Coffey. This is another one published by Jove, I believe this is a vampire story. Alex and Sarah Milholland came to Bryan Cove on the eve of a dark anniversary, and they had a visitor, a woman child of startling beauty, who appeared out of nowhere the night of the mysterious storm. With her arrival, the Milhollands' quiet life was invaded by dark murmurings, strange erotic whispers, secrets deeper than even the grave. Who was Marina? An innocent child? A demonic seductress? What did she want? Why was she luring them deeper and deeper into the night where ecstasy and evil are one? So it actually sounds more like a succubus story. Next we have The Selkie. This is published by Signet, and I love that cover. That is amazing cover art. I actually have the hardcover version of this too, which has a really nice cover, but I love that paperback step back art. That is amazing. Next is Death Run, and this is by George Warren, published by Guild Press. This isn't actually a horror book. This is more of like a Mad Max style futuristic action story. It says, it was the independent truckers' last-ditch effort to combat years of violent abuse from organized crime. Now they had to haul their precious load of liquor from Albuquerque to LA, and they desperately needed protection along the way. Using bikers, drifters, the biggest, meanest men they could find, the gypsy truckers spread out over the deserted interstate in the 20th century version of a 19th century cattle drive. Only it was about to turn into an asphalt battlefield strewn with fire and bullets, muscle and blood. That sounds so fun. Next we have The Bureau of Lost Souls by Christopher Fowler. Now I found a lot of these at the same bookstore. This is a Roundabout Books in Troy, Ohio. They're awesome. I go there every few months and try to load up on some more horror books. They always have a lot of books that I missed, so this was one of those. I'm loving that cover art. This one is The Visitor by G.R. Cunningham. Creepy, creepy cover. Actually, that doll kind of reminds me of Charlie from Hereditary. It's kind of spooky, like a doll version of her. From Bantam Books, we have Forbidden Garden. This is by Diane Guest. Looks like a V.C. Andrews style book. You even have the full artwork there on the back. Definitely getting V.C. Andrews vibes from that. And then the very last book in this book haul is Lowrider by Chet Williamson. This is published by Tor. I've wanted this book for so long. I love that cover art. I've seen it online and I'm like, yeah, I gotta read that. This one's a little bit creased up, but it's not in like bad condition. It's just the spine creases. So there you have it. That is the rest of my January 2021 book haul. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to drop a like down below. Please subscribe, comment, let me know what you thought about these books, and I'll see you in the next episode of Library Macabre. Later, creeps.